Research is being conducted at Griffith University on voting behaviour and people's attitudes towards democracy. Well, joining me live is Dr. Sarah Cameron, political scientist at Griffith University. How are you today, Dr. Cameron?
Well, thank you, Janie. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So a lot of research that you have been doing over a number of years. What have you found, first of all, regarding generational change in voting?
So what we have seen in research from the Australian election study is that voters are shifting to the left over time, and particularly younger generations. So Millennials and Generation Z have shifted further to the left in comparison to previous generations when they were young. So as these younger generations replace older generations, this is having the effect of shifting politics to the left in Australia.
What are some of the reasons for these shifts?
So there's a number of factors that are contributing to this. Partly this is to do with younger people having different issue priorities, particularly younger people are more concerned about the environment and progressive social issues. But also we can think about how younger generations aren't meeting some of these traditional adulthood milestones at the same stage of life. This includes home ownership and starting a family, whereby these milestones are often met later, if at all. And so some of the factors that might influence people to shift to the right as they get older are not occurring in the same way that they used to. The oldest millennials are not particularly young anymore, in their late 30s and early 40s. And we're not seeing that this group is shifting to the right as they get older. If anything, they are shifting further to the left.
Yeah, it's interesting. And how satisfied are voters with the chosen candidates and the various parties?
So what we have seen looking at trends over time is that voters have become increasingly dissatisfied with the way democracy works in Australia and more distrustful of politicians. We also see that partisanship for the major political parties has reached record lows and that the electorate has become more volatile. So in 2022, just 37% of voters said that they consistently vote the same way in every election, and that was the lowest that it had ever been.
And what have you noticed regarding voters' interest, for example, Teal independents and other minor parties?
So the conditions for the success of the Teals in 2022 have been brewing for some time. They precede the 2022 election. And that includes these record low levels of partisanship, people becoming less favourable towards the major political parties, also a decline in the use of how to vote cards, and fewer people than ever consistently voting the same way in every election. So people were dissatisfied for some time now. But what was unique in the 2022 election was that this disaffection was met, in certain seats at least, with well-funded, high-profile Teal independent campaigns that tapped into this disaffection among voters and also particularly targeted areas of weakness for the previous coalition government, including climate change, political integrity and gender equality.
All right, and do you think voters are more interested in investing time into actually researching their candidates?
So we're not seeing a shift in political interest over time when we track those trends. We do see differences among population subgroups. So men tend to be more interested in politics than women, and older voters tend to be more interested in politics than younger voters. And when we ask voters what was the most important factor in determining their vote, we tend to see that a majority will say that their vote is based on policy issues, around 60 to 70% normally. About 20% say it's based on the political parties as a whole, and then about 10% each say it's based on the party leader or the candidate in the electorate.
And what about members of the parties and their policies? Are we seeing these changes? And if so, to what extent?
So there's this interesting tension for the major political parties at the moment. Labor has some challenges in that are they targeting the working class base, the traditional base of Labor voters, or are they focused on these so-called inner city progressive voters with an emphasis on environmental policies and progressive policies on social issues? And so that's an interesting tension there for Labor. And we do see over time that there has been a decline in the proportion of working class voters that support Labor. Still, more working class support Labor than the coalition, but this support for Labor has been diminishing over time. And then for the coalition, we see a different set of challenges, and in particular, the challenge for the coalition is around a reduced support among younger generations, with Millennials and Generation Z making up a greater proportion of the electorate. They need to address that lack of support among younger voters. And the other area, which is a major weakness for the coalition, is diminishing support among women voters. They have lost so much support among women over the past 10 years. And in fact, it used to be the case in the 1990s that the coalition attracted more votes from women than men, but that has reversed over time, so that now the coalition receives more votes from men than women, and that gender gap in voting has been increasing over time.